What's going on, gardeners? It's Thursday, March 23rd, and spring is finally here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. And on today's video, I'm going to share with you a complete guide from start to finish on how to fertilize your fruit trees in spring. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated. For me, fertilizing fruit trees in spring is a four-step process, and the first step of that process is to make sure that you get the timing right. And in order to get the timing right, you need to know what your average last frost date in spring is. That's because fertilizing your fruit trees in spring, especially deciduous fruit trees, can wake them up out of dormancy more quickly and can trigger new leafy green growth that is tender and susceptible to a late frost or freeze. So to ensure that we do not wake our trees up too early and encourage leafy green growth before our last freeze and frost of the year, we want to wait until 1 to 2 weeks before our last frost date to fertilize our fruit trees. Now, you may be wondering, why am I fertilizing before the last frost date? That is because we are going to use an organic granulated all-purpose fertilizer to fertilize our fruit trees. And these organic all-purpose granular fertilizers are inert in their fertilizing form. They are not bioavailable to trees when they're granulated like this. They have to be broken down by the native soil biology and microbiology in order to break down into nutrients that your trees can use. So when you apply them, they don't do anything right away. It takes a few weeks for these to break down. So when you apply your organic granulated fertilizers 1 to 2 weeks before your last frost date, by the time your last frost date comes and goes, the fertilizer should finally be decomposing and breaking down for your trees to use. I'm about 7 to 10 days away from my average last frost date right now, and looking at the 2-week forecast, I seem to be in the clear, so now is when I'm going to go ahead and start fertilizing my fruit trees. Now, if you're not 100% sure when your average last frost date is, it's best to be a little conservative. It's better to fertilize your fruit trees a week late than it is a week too early and encourage leafy green growth that can get damaged by a late frost or freeze. So do your best to look up your last average frost date. Look ahead at your 2-week forecast once you get within 1 to 2 weeks of that last frost date and make a conservative decision. The second step is to properly apply the fertilizers to your trees. Now, fertilizing is both an art and a science, and I'm going to show you what I think is the best way to apply the organic fertilizers. Before we apply our fertilizer, we are going to read the directions on the back of the bag. Here we can clearly see that this fertilizer should be applied at a rate of 4 pounds per 100 square feet, where 1 pound of fertilizer equals 3 cups of fertilizer. Now here comes everybody's favorite part, the math. I'm going to fertilize each of my fruit trees in a 4 foot by 4 foot or 16 square foot square. And because the bag says we need to apply 4 pounds of fertilizer for every 100 square feet, and each tree is 16% of that, that means that each fruit tree gets 0.64 pounds of fertilizer. We'll round up to 2/3 of a pound just to be safe, because we know that 3 cups of fertilizer equals 1 pound, so each tree gets a nice and even 2 cups of fertilizer. So each of these fruit trees will receive about 2/3 of a pound of fertilizer. Now, it's very easy to find granulated organic fertilizers for about $2 a pound, so even at normal price, I could fertilize each of these fruit trees for about $1.30 a piece. So I will be able to fertilize both my apple trees and my peach tree for about the same price as a bag of apples from the grocery store. Factor in that I buy all of my fertilizers at a deep discount in the fall when they're about 75% off, and I'm fertilizing each of these fruit trees for only a little bit more than a quarter per tree. So at the base of each fruit tree, we're going to rake back the existing mulch, being careful not to disturb any of the surface roots. So we're going to be really light with our raking, and we're going to rake all of the mulch back within roughly a 4 foot by 4 foot square to apply our fertilizer. So now that the mulch layer has been pulled back and our soil layer is exposed, we're going to spread the 2 cups of fertilizer in a ring around the tree. However, we're going to be careful to not spread the fertilizer at the trunk of the tree, because remember, all your roots are out here actually. So you want to spread the fertilizer in a ring around the tree. So I have 1 cup placed in a half circle on this side of the tree, and then we're going to place the second cup of fertilizer in a half circle on the other side of the tree, all around where the roots are. And then we're going to lightly work that fertilizer into the first top inch or 2 of the soil. And you want to get that worked into the soil a little bit because, again, it's the soil microbiology that breaks down all of this fertilizer. The fertilizer has been applied to my first 5 fruit trees that are all in a straight line right here, and it has been scratched into the top inch or 2 of the soil in order to assist in the breakdown process. Now that the fertilizer has been applied, I'm going to show you step 3. Step 3 is to provide a compost and mulch layer to all of your fruit trees. Now you may be wondering, why do I need to apply compost when I just added fertilizer? Compost is not fertilizer. Yes, it is true that there is a small fertilizer component to compost, but the purpose of adding compost is actually to add organic matter into your soil and feed the soil microbiology, not necessarily the trees themselves. As for the mulch layer, the purpose of that is to regulate soil moisture so there's less evaporation. It's to protect the soil temperatures from getting too cold in the winter and too hot in the summer, and it also protects the roots from the damaging effects of sun. The compost I'm going to be using today is this organic mushroom compost that I picked up at Lowe's for only about $3 a bag, and it's a 1 cubic foot bag. I'm going to split that bag between 2 fruit trees, so that means that each fruit tree will get half a bag or half a cubic foot. Now when it comes to what compost to use, it doesn't matter. I'm using an organic mushroom compost here, but you can use homemade compost, you can use locally made compost, you can use cow manure compost. It doesn't matter as long as you're sure it hasn't been treated with some type of herbicide. You only really have 2 rules here. The first rule is that you never want to pile the compost up against the trunk of the tree because that can cause trunk rot. We want to surround it in a circle around the tree. And the second rule is you want to spread the compost in a 1-inch thick layer and cover all of the organic fertilizer that you just put down, because covering this organic fertilizer with this compost, remember this fertilizer is inert in its raw form right out of the bag, so we're bringing in all of this soil microbiology with this compost, so you're actually going to speed up the processing of this fertilizer. The compost and the fertilizer work in partnership together. The natural soil biology in the compost will help process the fertilizer. So they're really a team. And now we have it all spread in a nice even ring around this tree. Now that all of our compost is down, we're going to apply mulch. Now I really don't care what mulch you use as long as it is a natural mulch. Don't use something like dyed mulch or rubber mulch, because they're usually either leftover construction materials that have been dyed to look like real wood or chopped up tires or something else terrible. Use a natural mulch. I don't care if it's hardwood mulch, I don't care if it's pine bark nuggets, just make sure it's natural. My favorite mulch is the old straw that I have that I use to insulate my bananas over the winter. Old straw is my personal favorite mulch, and that's what I'm going to use right here. Now before I apply the fresh mulch, I'm going to take the old mulch layer and I'm going to pull it around the compost because we want to reuse what we already had first. And now that the old mulch has roughly been put back in place, we are going to place the fresh mulch, which is the leftover decaying straw that I had placed around my banana trees. And I'm using this because it's completely free and it is a fantastic free source of mulch for my yard. You can use chopped up leaves, you can use seed-free, weed-free grass clippings, you can use pine needles. If you don't want to go out and pay for mulch, you can run to your local county landfill and go get a truckload of free mulch if they offer it. As long as it is natural, you are good to go. Now all of the straw has been placed around the trees, and just like the compost, we don't want to pile our mulch up against the base of the trees. We want to mulch around the trees. If we mulch around the base of the tree, we can actually cause trunk rot. Now I believe the ideal thickness of your mulch layer is about 3 inches thick. If you go thinner than that, it won't do a good job at suppressing weeds, but if you go a lot thicker than that, you also run the risk of suffocating the tree roots because they need access access to air. They breathe just like we do. So you don't want to go crazy thick on your mulch layer. Now, that being said, you don't have to get a tape measure out. Just eyeball it at 3 inches. Try to get it thick enough that you think it's going to suppress the weeds, but don't have some crazy amount of mulch that's going to be so much it's going to suffocate the roots of your trees. Then we're going to water all around the base of our trees. This is both going to lock in the mulch layer so it does not blow away in the wind, and it will also begin the decomposition process of the organic granulated fertilizers. The organic granulated fertilizers need to be moist in order to break down. So it's important that anytime you apply them, you wet them down and you keep them lightly moist for several days, up to a week or two after that, to assist in the decomposition process. The fourth step is going to be an optional step, and it is going to depend on your own situation, and that is to give your fruit trees a water-soluble fertilizer. Now, water-soluble fertilizers are different than organic granulated fertilizers. The water-soluble fertilizers have either been processed naturally or in a laboratory somewhere, so when you mix them with water, they are immediately bioavailable by the trees and they take them up immediately. So for that reason, if your fruit trees are still dormant and you're growing deciduous fruit trees and you're not sure if your last frost has passed yet, you do not want to do this step yet, because while the organic fertilizers can take weeks or even months to break down and feed your trees, the water-soluble fertilizers are immediately available and can wake up your trees very quickly. So for that reason, I am not going to feed any of the trees that I've showed you thus far, my apples, peach and pear and persimmon trees, any water-soluble fertilizer, because I don't want them to wake up just yet. However, my citrus trees behind me, these are all going on their 3rd year. And citrus trees are evergreen trees. They need to be fed year-round. They do not have a dormancy period. And because they're going into their 3rd year, this is the year where they usually put on lots of vertical growth. And for that reason, I want to give them some stronger fertilizers that they can use immediately, and they are also at the stage where they are about to start flowering. So I need to do this now. So again, if you are 100% sure that you're already past your last chance of frost date, or you're growing evergreen trees that need to be fertilized year-round, and your trees are still in an establishment and growth period and benefit from heavy fertilizers to get a big jump start on the season, you can give them this water-soluble fertilizer. But if these are mature in-ground trees that have collectively miles of roots and they're mostly self-sustaining at this point, you can probably skip this step, and it's okay to just keep good soil culture with organic fertilizers, compost, and mulch. To do this, I'm going to give them my favorite blend of water-soluble fertilizers. The first thing is in the bottom of this bucket right here. This is a 5-gallon paint bucket. I have a tablespoon of azomite. You don't have to use this, but I like using it for some trace mineral content. Then I'm going to give them a 1 tablespoon per gallon concentration of Jack's All-Purpose 20-20-20, which I'm a big fan of. I have all of these things linked in my Amazon storefront under soluble fertilizers if you're interested. And the last thing I'm going to give them is a big glug of 511 Alaska fish fertilizer. This is great stuff. I love using this on all of my fruit trees and garden vegetables. You don't have to use all of these things. It's my favorite combination, but if you just want to keep it simple, you can just go with the Jack's 20-20, or if you don't need something like this and you only have a few fruit trees, you can even run into the store and get yourself Miracle Grow Tomato 18-18-21. It's pretty balanced and it will work in a pinch. And each of these fruit trees will get 1/3 of this 5-gallon bucket of fertilizer. And that right there is my 4-step process to fertilizing fruit trees every single spring. Now, every time I make a video on fertilizing, I always get some comments of people concerned about the money I'm spending on fertilizers. When I add up the amount of fertilizer, compost, and mulch that I'm spending on each of these trees, it's literally like $3, maybe $4 at normal price, and I buy all these things on clearance. I'm spending less than the cost of a single bag of apples to fertilize my apple trees. So all the apples I get for that season, it's going to be less than the cost of a single bag of apples at a grocery store, and the apples are going to taste a whole lot better. Remember, gardening isn't free. It is an investment, and the amount of love and attention you put in, that is what you get back. If you're going to neglect your trees, they are still probably going to produce for you, but just like any investment, the ones you pay attention to and make smart decisions with return more. So if I put just a few hours and a few dollars into my tree every single year and it doubles the return for me, that is worth it. And that is the way you need to think when you garden, especially when young. The maintenance actually decreases with fruit trees over time. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when we release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I used in this video or that I use in my garden in general, they are all linked down below in my Amazon storefront in the video description, and I'll also put a few direct links in the video description for you as well for your convenience. So if you want to see everything I use in real life, check out my Amazon storefront link, and while you're there, check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. I have to cut some cheese for dinner, and Dale is absolutely nowhere to be found. He's upstairs resting. I wonder what will happen if I just... Uh-oh. Oh, there he is. I didn't know he was there. Dale, I thought you were upstairs. You scared me. Look at him. Look at that little monster. I had no idea until I heard this sound. Oh boy. Oh, somebody wants a cheese treat. Dale's already had so many treats today. I shouldn't even give him this cheese. He doesn't need any more. He's being a good boy. All right, not the best throw, not the best catch, but you got it, buddy.